rarely begins with a dramatic moment. There's no memory you can point to and say, "This is the day I stopped being myself and started becoming who everyone needed." It begins quietly, in the small moments. Your heart was too young to understand, but old enough to absorb. Maybe it was the sigh your mother released when you asked for something she couldn't give. Maybe it was the way your father's face tightened when your excitement was louder than his patience. They weren't trying to hurt you. But to a child, even accidental shadows feel like truth. This is where the story begins. Children don't say, "My parents are overwhelmed," or "They're carrying wounds I can't see." They say, "If I can be good, everything will stay warm." And that is the birth of the good child. Not from purity, not from obedience, but from instinct. A quiet, intelligent instinct to keep love close. You learn to study your parents carefully. Not their words, but the spaces between them. The footsteps in the hallway, the tone in their voice, the way the room changed. Before anyone explained why. Before you understood language, you understood atmosphere. This wasn't intuition, it was survival. Your first lesson in reading the emotional weather. Jung once said, "The psyche forms around what it must endure," and yours began forming around the idea that peace was not a given. It was something you had to earn. So you softened your voice. You dimmed your joy. You learned to walk gently in places that felt fragile. Not because you wanted to be perfect, but because something in you whispered, "If I stay easy, if I stay agreeable, they won't pull away." That's how the good child grows. Quietly, skillfully, lovingly. A child taking responsibility for the emotional world around them. Your parents didn't intend to teach you that love had conditions. They didn't know that their exhaustion, their silence, their tension became the blueprint your nervous system built itself around. But intention doesn't cancel impact. Your small, developing self learned to step back so your parents could breathe, and a different version of you stepped forward, the one who made everything easier. Not wrong, not broken, just adaptive. You didn't lose yourself. You placed yourself gently aside, hoping someone would come back for you. You became pleasing because you were loving, because you were wise, because you were trying to protect the connection your survival depended on. And that is where it all began. Not with weakness, but with the extraordinary sensitivity of a child who loved too deeply to risk being left behind. When you're small, your parents aren't just people. They're your entire universe. Your first definition of love. Your first mirror. Your first gods. You don't see their exhaustion. You don't see the childhood wounds they carry. You don't see the emotional storms inside them that existed long before you were born. You only feel the way those storms shape the air you grow up breathing. And this is where the story deepens. A parent who was taught to hide their feelings often raises a child who learns to swallow their own. A parent who grew up unseen may overlook the child standing right in front of them. A parent who never learned emotional safety cannot teach it, even if they love you with everything they have. None of this was intentional, but all of it was formative. In Jungian language, your parents' shadow, the parts of themselves they could not face, was passed down to you without a single word being spoken. Your anger, your boundaries, your sadness, your vibrant, messy, beautiful emotions. These were never flaws. They were simply the pieces. Your parents did not yet know how to hold, so you hid them, not out of disobedience, but out of loyalty. Children will abandon themselves long before they abandon their parents. This is how the good child becomes a role. Instead of a phase, you learn to be calm. Because the house felt safer when you were quiet. You learn to be helpful. Because your parents softened when you carried the weight. You learn to be agreeable. Because conflict felt like distance, and distance felt like danger. Every small adaptation was an act of love. But every adaptation was also a step away from your own emotional center. This wasn't you being mature. This wasn't you being easygoing. This was emotional vigilance, the kind only a child performs when connection feels fragile. You watched your parents the way some children watch cartoons with total absorption. Their sighs became signals. Their silence became instructions. Their moods became the map you navigated your entire world by. This was your early training in the art of self-erasure. Jung called this adaptation the persona, the mask we create to survive the world we enter. Your persona was gentle, polite, composed, the one who never asked for too much, the one who sensed tension before a single word was spoken. But personas always come with a cost. Because while you were perfecting the mask, the real you, your wildness, your voice, your needs, your truth, slipped quietly into the shadows. Not rejected, not broken, just exiled. Here is a tender truth. You may need to hear, your parents did not fail you because they lacked love. They failed you because they lacked understanding. Understanding of themselves, of their wounds, of the emotional inheritance they passed down without ever meaning to. They could not give what they were never given. They could not mirror what was never mirrored in them. They could not soothe what they were taught to silence. And so you learned to adapt. Brilliantly, intuitively, lovingly. If I stay small, I'll be safe. If I make them happy, they'll stay close. If I'm no trouble, they'll keep loving me. These beliefs shape the architecture of your entire inner world. Not because you were weak, but because you were wise. A child doing everything they could to protect the bond their survival depended on. And by the time you grew up, the good child was no longer a strategy. It was an identity, but it was never your true one. It was simply who you needed to be. To survive that home with those parents in that chapter of your life. A chapter that is ending now because you are finally old enough to write the next one for yourself. Even though you've grown, even though your life looks nothing like the one you knew as a child, your body still remembers the emotional landscape you were raised in. Because the body doesn't simply remember events, it remembers patterns. It remembers atmospheres. It remembers the feel of the home. You once tried so hard to keep peaceful, and this is where things get complicated. Today, when someone frowns at you, or answers slowly, or sounds disappointed, your body reacts long before your mind understands why. Your chest tightens, your breath shortens, your thoughts race toward self-blame. Not because of what's happening now, but because the moment feels familiar. It carries the echo of your mother's quiet withdrawal, the tone your father used when he was overwhelmed, the emotional climate you learned to adjust yourself to before you were even old enough to name it. This is the part most people overlook. Your present-day reactions are often shaped by an earlier version of you, still trying to keep you safe. Jung said that what remains unconscious returns as fate, and your nervous system, the deepest, oldest part of you, still moves as if the past is happening in real time. That's why saying no feels dangerous, even when you logically know it isn't. That's why disagreements feel like threats. That's why disappointing someone can send a tremor through your whole being. Your body isn't overreacting, it's protecting you, using the only blueprint it was ever given. Because when you were young, disapproval didn't just sting. It disrupted the fragile connection your survival depended on. So today, when tension appears, your system shifts instantly into the same role it learned as a child. Make peace. Fix it quickly. Don't lose the bond. Don't be the problem. And that's when you find yourself saying yes to things you don't want, softening statements you meant to stand behind, apologizing for emotions that were honest, human, and entirely valid. Not because you lack strength, but because a younger you still believes. Your belonging is at stake. This is how old conditioning travels with you. It moves through your posture, through the way you breathe, through the speed at which you give in. The moment someone seems disappointed, it isn't rational, it's relational. It's the child inside you, still scanning for danger, in faces that look nothing like the ones you grew up with. And here's something important. You may have left the house where all this began, but the emotional wiring you built there came with you. It lives in the way you brace when someone raises their voice. It lives in the way you second guess a simple boundary. It lives in the way you replay conversations, trying to find the moment where you imagine everything went wrong. These aren't flaws. They are memories. Not memories of moments, but memories of survival. And they show up because your nervous system would rather exhaust itself keeping you safe than risk repeating the loneliness it once felt in that childhood home. But here is the quiet shift you might feel emerging. You are no longer that child. You don't have to earn safety through silence. You don't have to secure love through self-abandonment. You don't have to carry the burden of everyone else's emotions just to feel connected. Your body simply hasn't learned that yet. It is waiting for you to teach it a new way. A way where connection doesn't require pleasing, where honesty doesn't lead to punishment, and where you can be fully yourself, without fear that someone will disappear because of it. The child inside you remembers the old rules, but the adult you're becoming is ready to write new ones. And that is where healing begins, not by forcing yourself to be different, but by gently showing your nervous system that the danger is over and the world you live in now does not require you to disappear to be loved. From the outside, you look like someone people can rely on, understanding, easy to be around, the friend who listens, the partner who adjusts, the coworker who carries the extra weight without pointing it out. People admire you for this. They say you're kind, patient, compassionate. And yes, you are. Your sensitivity is real. Your heart is generous. Your empathy is deep. But beneath that gentle surface lives a quiet ache most people will never see. Because being the easy one comes with a loneliness that rarely has words. When your childhood taught you that connection must be protected, at any cost, you learned early to prioritize everyone's emotions except your own. And in adulthood, that pattern continued. As naturally as breathing, you became the person who steps in before help is needed, the one who softens their truth so others don't feel discomfort, the one who gives without being asked, because giving feels safer than risking the moment someone might pull away. But here is the part that sits heavy inside many people pleasers. You are surrounded by people, yet feel unseen by most of them. Not because they don't care, but because you've spent years teaching the world that you don't need much. You've taught them that you'll understand, you'll adjust, you'll forgive, you'll carry the emotional weight, so no one else has to. And people believe you, not out of malice, but because you make it look effortless. But you and I both know it is not effortless. It costs you. It costs your energy, your boundaries, your voice, your truth. And over time, this quiet cost becomes a quiet loneliness. A loneliness that grows each time you hide what you feel to keep the peace, each time you smile to cover the exhaustion, each time you say it's okay when it isn't. This is the loneliness that belongs to the good child, the loneliness of being needed but not understood, the loneliness of being valued for your helpfulness rather than your wholeness, the loneliness of realizing people know the version of you that makes their lives easier, but not the version that needs to be held and heard and seen. In Jungian terms, your persona, the mask you created to stay safe, became the face the world fell in love with, not the shy child behind it, not the sensitive heart beneath it, not the truth you quieted, so others wouldn't feel discomfort, just the version of you who made everything smoother for everyone else. But masks, no matter how kind or beautiful, often become prisons, because while the world praises you for your gentleness, your inner self whispers a different truth. I'm tired of being the strong one. I'm tired of being the calm one. I'm tired of being the person everyone comes to, but few stay for. This isn't because you're unlovable. It's because the real you has been hidden for so long that few have ever had the chance to truly love you. Your childhood taught you that keeping the peace was safer than being honest. But honesty is where connection grows. And connection is what you've been craving. Beneath all that carefulness, you don't want to be admired. You want to be known. You want to be met. You want to feel seen, not for what you offer, but for who you are. When you stop offering anything, and here is the gentlest truth in all of this, you did not become invisible. Because you lacked value, you became invisible. Because you learned to appear only in the ways that felt safe, the world has never rejected the real you. It simply hasn't met them yet. Not because you weren't ready to be seen, but because you were busy surviving. And now, for the first time in your life, you're beginning to feel that this loneliness is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something inside you is ready to come out of hiding. There comes a moment in every healing journey when the truth rises quietly, like something you've been carrying for years, but never had the courage to look at. That moment is grief. Not loud grief, not chaotic grief, but the tender kind. The kind that arrives in a breath, in a realization, in the soft ache of understanding. Just how much of yourself you had to tuck away to be loved. People think healing starts with confidence, or boundaries, or learning how to say no. But real healing begins here, with seeing the child you once were, and finally admitting how hard they had to work just to feel safe. Because people-pleasing isn't a habit. It's a childhood story, a survival script, a pattern passed from your parents' pain into your small, sensitive hands, and grief begins when you realize you were never meant to hold that weight. You might feel anger at first, a deep, surprising anger at parents who taught you love was earned and closeness was conditional. Anger at the moments they shut down when you needed them open. Anger at the times they withdrew when you needed warmth. This anger is not disrespect. It is clarity. It is the voice of your inner child, finally being heard. But after the anger comes guilt, because you remember the other moments too. Their tenderness, their quiet efforts, their own invisible battles. And you wonder, did they try their best? Am I being unfair? Was it really that bad? Both truths can exist at once. you can honor their humanity and still acknowledge that their limitations shaped yours. You can recognize their struggles and still feel the pain of what you did not receive. Grief isn't about blaming them. It's about seeing you, seeing the child who dimmed their joy so no one felt overwhelmed, seeing the child who swallowed their needs so no one felt burdened, seeing the child who silenced their emotions so the house stayed calm. These sacrifices were never small. They were foundational. Jung wrote that the inner child holds the soul of who we are. The unfiltered self, the instinctive self, the self that existed before shame taught us to hide. And for many people pleasers, that inner child has spent years living behind closed emotional doors, not because they were unwanted, but because your parents' shadows couldn't hold their light. Grief is the moment you reach toward that child again, not to rescue them, but to acknowledge them, to say the words. No one ever said to you, you never had to be perfect. You never had to earn your place. You never had to disappear to stay loved. This grief is gentle, but it is piercing. It rearranges the way you remember your past and the way you understand your present. Because once you see the truth, you begin to notice how deeply the old training still lives in you. The way you apologize for taking up space, the way you soften your truth so others feel comfortable, the way you monitor someone's tone as if their mood determines your worth, the way you shrink whenever conflict appears. These aren't flaws, they are echoes, echoes of a childhood where you learned that safety was something you earned by being small. But grief isn't only sorrow. It is recognition. It is validation. It is the beginning of reclaiming the parts of yourself that had to hide, to keep the peace. And as you grieve, something remarkable begins to happen. The inner child you thought was lost starts to stir. The one who held your boundaries before they were broken. The one who held your truth before it was silenced. The one who held your fire before it was tamed. Grief is the doorway that lets them step back into the light, not to take over your life, but to remind you of the self you were before fear became your compass. Grieving the love you learned to earn isn't about rewriting your past. It's about freeing your future from the rules that no longer protect you. It's the moment you stop asking, "What was wrong with me?" and start whispering, "Nothing. There was never anything wrong with me." Healing from people-pleasing doesn't begin with bold boundaries or sudden confidence or waking up one morning ready to say no. It starts quietly, the same way your people-pleasing began, not with a dramatic shift, but with a small awareness that grows gently inside you. It starts with a pause, a breath between the instinct to please and the possibility that you don't have to anymore. At first, that pause feels unfamiliar. It feels like a rule you're breaking, a rule your childhood taught you, long before you ever understood what boundaries were. But this pause is the threshold between who you became to survive and who you are now becoming to live. Because every time you hesitate before reshaping yourself for someone else, you are meeting a younger part of you, the child who learned that safety depended on pleasing. And instead of letting that child make the choice for you, gently whisper, "We're not in danger anymore. We don't have to earn love now. We're allowed to choose." This is the heart of Jungian healing. Not forcing yourself into a new identity, but integrating the one you hid with the one you are ready to reveal. You become the adult your inner child needed, the one who doesn't punish emotions, the one who doesn't disappear during conflict, the one who doesn't make love conditional on how quiet or agreeable you are. You become the voice that says, it's okay to take up space. It's okay to disappoint someone. It's okay to tell the truth, even when your voice trembles. At first, your body won't believe you. It will shake, it will worry, it will tighten in old familiar places, not because you are regressing, but because your nervous system is still carrying the memory of the child who was taught to accommodate, to stay connected. So when you say no for the first time, your body will react as if something terrible might happen. When you set a boundary, your heart will race, as if punishment is coming. When you tell the truth instead of pleasing, your mind will fear. You're putting love at risk. This isn't failure. This is the beginning. Because with each small truth you speak, your nervous system learns something new. That honesty does not destroy connection, that boundaries do not end love, that authenticity does not push people away. And slowly, your inner world begins to shift. The people who only valued you for your silence may fade. The people who relied on your compliance may resist. The people who loved the mask may not know how to love the person beneath it. But the people who stay, the people who listen, the people who honor your boundaries, the people who value your truth more than your performance, those are the people your soul has been waiting for. Because connection built on honesty is connection that can hold you. Connection built on performance can never last. And as you keep choosing yourself in small, steady ways, you start to notice something important. Stillness no longer feels dangerous. Peace no longer feels empty. Being seen no longer feels unsafe. Taking up space no longer feels selfish. You begin to like the person you are. When you're no longer editing yourself, you begin to recognize the voice that rises from within. When fear stops leading the conversation, you begin to feel the weight of a lifetime of pleasing finally loosening its grip. And in that soft release, you rediscover someone you thought was lost, the child you were. Before you learned to disappear, the one who felt deeply, without apology, the one who spoke honestly, without fear, the one who didn't measure love by how much they gave, but by how freely they existed. That child was always there. They were simply waiting for you to return. because your parents may have shaped your earliest understanding of love, but they do not get to define your final one. You are allowed to choose differently now. You are allowed to create a life where connection is mutual, not earned, where love is steady, not conditional, where your truth is welcomed, not punished. And as you step into that life, slowly, gently, honestly, you will realize something profound. You were never meant to be agreeable. You were meant to be whole. You were never meant to disappear. You were meant to belong. You were never meant to carry everyone else's emotional weight. You were meant to carry your own truth with dignity, clarity, and compassion. And the moment you begin choosing authenticity over approval, presence over perfection, self-respect over self-erasure, that is the moment you stop being a people pleaser and start being a person again. Thank you for watching this content. The next video is much more important. Don't miss that. I'll see you there.